Genuinely, a lot of the time when I press record and I take out my liddy, yeah, it is a lit mic, my little microphone, it's a roll of the dice. I genuinely don't know whether what I'll say will resonate with people or if it'll land in the same way that it has in my brain when I'm thinking about the topic beforehand. This, however, I'm 99% confident that a majority of you will be able to relate to this feeling and this reflection. This came to me via an Instagram DM back when I was on Instagram, and it was in response to a story that I had posted about the fact that I was sick of being so self-critical about myself and I needed to just embrace a little bit more self-acceptance. Someone messaged me and she said to me that her therapist put forward this concept of, are you being self-aware or are you being self-critical? Now, I've had so many different thoughts and I've read so many self-development and self-help books over the years that it's rare when I hear something and it kind of hits on a level where it feels like I've never heard it quite said in that way before. And that's exactly what this statement was for me. Because the thing is, something I'm proud of, but something I know I need to distance myself from is the fact that when it comes to a lot of things that have transpired in my life, whether that be relationships, jobs, decisions, what have you, central to that and to the aftermath of me unpacking it and thinking maybe a little bit too deeply about it is the fact that I always hold myself a little bit too accountable in all of that. What I mean by is that it's so second nature for me to blame myself. The difference is though, and this pertains to like the topic of the video in general, when I hold myself accountable, in my mind, I felt in the past that I was doing my higher self a service because I thought this is in the name of self-development, this is in the name of being a better human being. By nitpicking and by blaming and again by taking responsibility, I thought that I was doing like the quote unquote right thing. I can't tell you when or how this got programmed into my mind, but I suppose it's been such a natural thing for me to always hold that position of being self-critical. The biggest difference is though, I always thought that I was being self-aware. You know, I'm a self-proclaimed person who says they have a lot of emotional intelligence. I like to hope so anyway. And underlying all of the many reflections that I've had throughout the years was this sense of, yeah, but I'm learning something and I'm helping myself develop into the person that I want to be. Now, why I said I feel like this is so relatable, or I hope it at least will be relatable to other people, is because my generation, the younger generations, are really, we know what it's like to focus on self-development. We know what it's like to do the shadow work, the inner work, because we want to be self-aware. And I think that is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's something that I wish the older generations were a little bit more privy to. There does come a moment though where I think we have to just pause and reassess and reevaluate the position that we're taking in all of this. Because there is self-awareness and there is self-development, which as I said is a good thing. But there is also the point that we kind of come to sometimes that we're always like tipping towards, of just being really harsh about ourselves. You know, being overly negative towards the role that we've played in a situation or relationship. I'm definitely coming from a place of relatability pertaining to my own situation, because I know that my mind can really just go all the way back into the past and go into that state of blaming and shaming. But right probably up until like a few months ago, I never saw fault in that. And it wasn't until I think I got to a stage where I realized I have done a lot of work on myself, and maybe they just needed to come to a point where I ease up a little bit. And it's not to say that I stop doing the self-development work and I stop reflecting inwardly. It just means maybe I recognize that there doesn't always have to be something wrong with me or something that is wrong. I've previously spoken to this before in videos, but for a lot of my 20s and even into my early 30s, I always kind of formed this idea of who I was based off of my deficiencies, like I was the person with the eating disorder, I was the person with mental health issues, I was the person who had PMDD and hormonal issues. Even when I was posting my thoughts on my blog when I had it back in the day, everything that underpinned that was from a place of there's something inherently flawed and wrong with me. But it was almost like the point of those reflections was that there was like a lesson ultimately in all of that. Like, yes, I did that thing that looking back I probably could have chosen differently, but this is what I've learned and this is what it's shown me and this is what it's taught me. What I think it ultimately kept feeding into though was this rhetoric of that I always had to find and critique something within me in order to grow. And what this friend pointed out to me through this DM was that, is that entirely necessary? And does that always have to be the case in order to evolve as a human being? Now, I'm going to, for the sake of punctuating this video, tell you a story of something that happened this morning so it's fresh in my mind, and give you an example so you can better see the instances in which you can take constructive criticism and use it, and the moments that you simply need to put it to the side. So to paint a picture, it's 9 a.m. I'm in the bathroom. I'm getting ready to go for my walk that morning. I get a call from my mum. I know she's coming home from work. I know she probably wants to have a chat. I pick up the phone thinking that she's going to tell me about a good book that she's read, or she's going to tell me about what she's doing that weekend, blah, blah, blah. Instead, she tells me something she's reflected on from a conversation we'd had like a week and a half ago now, in which I was venting to her about something. And if you're a girl and you have a mum, you have those moments where you just need to get it out for no other reason than to get it out. And she said to me something that stuck in my mind at that moment, which was, sometimes you're just too much. She goes, Maria, you're a lot, you're a lot to deal with. And before you think that's overly critical, it's my mum. She's a direct person. She means well. She has a beautiful heart. She just has unfortunate delivery sometimes. After I ended that conversation, I thought about that notion of you're too much, especially in context with what I was talking to her about. And I separated myself completely from it. I was like, I'm not too much. I just am who I am, and the right people appreciate that about me. I think prior to that, and especially when I was younger, I would have taken that sentiment of you're too much and really delved deep into that and been like, well, yeah, like I am too much sometimes. Like, who's going to ever understand me? Like, who would ever want to be in a relationship with me? Blah, blah, blah. Spiral, spiral, spiral. This morning, however, I hung up the phone, I finished getting ready, I went on my walk, and I had a lovely morning. The reason I'm saying this is because we are not perfect people. I think there are very few of us on this planet that can attest to being a completely well-rounded, free of any flaw or characteristic that could be improved. I never want to be that person that's like, I've got my shit entirely together, nothing needs to be worked on, everything is amazing, I am amazing. No. But from that conversation, what I did take was the fact that there are always going to be moments where you're misinterpreted, you're not seen properly, you're misunderstood. Are you going to literally listen to every single comment or critique about you and take that to heart? Or are you going to better separate the outside noise, sometimes your own inner noise, and discern whether or not you need to actually dig deeper into that or just move on from it? What I realized this morning was just like, you know what? Not everything needs to be a point of self-reflection. Sometimes people will have opinions about you and you need to move on. The other side of that, however, is there are those times, there are those decisions in which you reflect back on something and you're just like, you know what? I kind of did the wrong thing there. But that's okay. I'm going to accept that. I'm going to apologize if I need to apologize, and I'm going to try and do better next time. The reason I'm putting it into context with the situation that happened with my mom and with situations that you can actually learn and grow from is, I guess, the sense of self-acceptance around all of it. We don't need to make everything a learning moment. And the moments that we do choose to learn from, we can do it from more of a place of self-love and self-acceptance. Obviously, when your mind is, I think, programmed to skew more towards the critical side, it's really challenging to come from that place of self-love and doing the best thing by your younger self and by, that inner child that we all have within us. I do think, however, if you've come to the place that I've come to in my life at this point, where you realize that you're being overly critical about yourself a majority of the time, you need to question it, You need to be able to separate yourself from the criticism and just be a little bit more kinder and gentler with yourself. I guess that is where I'm currently finding myself, because I've realized that, and you will see from all of my many videos that I've posted where I'm unraveling all of my inner thoughts, there does genuinely come a moment that you kind of need to let yourself be and not be so consumed with self-development for the sake of self-development. Always aspire to be self-aware. I feel like the world would be a better place if we were all more like that. But also discern from those moments when you can just be a little bit kinder to yourself and you can just accept things for what they are and not feel the need to unpack it and, more importantly, pick yourself apart in the process. So that's all I want to say. And to pose the question of, once again, are you being self-aware or are you being self-critical? Think about it next time something happens and you want to blame yourself. Maybe you just don't need to.